Hi, my name is Julia Williams,
And I'm Madison Bozzo.
and we're going to be presenting on women's migration from Mexico due to gender inequality and the psychological effects of the language gap.
To introduce this issue, from 1980 to 2004, the number of female migrants from Mexico to the United States has more than doubled, increasing from 7.3 million to 17.2 million. Women's mass migration from Mexico to the United States is due to numerous gender inequality driven issues, like violence against women, kidnapping, extortion, and human trafficking. In this presentation, we will explore factors that hinder this process, focusing on the language gap and how it affects migration.
To guide our research, we used the question of how does the language gap influence the psychological health of women seeking asylum in the US due to poor living conditions in Mexico.
To answer this question, we need to understand that the US serves a large part in the difficulty of claiming asylum, especially for Mexican women. This is because the Mexican and US governments favor men throughout the asylum process and drive women away from migrating through fear of migration channels. We should rethink what asylum means and how accessible it is for these women.
Additionally, by changing the meaning of asylum and making migration more accessible for those escaping dangerous situations in Mexico, women experiencing harsh conditions would be given the ability to migrate to the US safely and legally. And as a result of our research, we found a lot of main points. And the first one is that anxiety and the mental toll of a language gap as an immigrant is a huge force that really makes the process much more difficult. For example, second language anxiety is a very real thing, and it leads to strained social interactions and even a fear of loss of sense of self for immigrants, and fearing that they can no longer express their identity due to difficulty with languages. In addition, cultural differences within languages makes it very difficult for native speakers to understand English, like American culture and English language. In addition, the education system puts Spanish speakers at an extreme disadvantage compared to their English-speaking peers. This is because non-native speakers often lack the academic language that is needed to succeed in math, science, social studies, and other subjects. Some of these words include like integer, democracy, irony, interpret, and other similar academic words that are not normally taught when you learn English as a second language. And these words are basic building blocks in the education system, and the unfamiliarity with them puts students at an extreme disadvantage to their peers. And lastly, the healthcare experience isn't nearly as effective for Spanish speakers, and patients often end up poorly cared for or don't receive the same quality of interactions in healthcare due to the language gap. Communication is strained between healthcare providers, and the use of interpreters often leads to a less personalized experience and even less empathy for the doctors because they feel that they're not speaking with an actual person with feelings and sensations because of the language gap.
Along with this, education in home countries can impact the financial aspects of the lives of immigrants once settled in the US. This entails their income, including short-term and long-term effects that may be the cause of this. Linguistic proximity, widely spoken languages, linguistic enclaves, and linguistic-based immigration policy requirements are important in international immigration, which means migrants consider if their language is widely spoken in the country of destination. There is also a lack of education for Mexican women on how to claim asylum, refuge, or how to safely migrate to the US. It is difficult for women to claim refuge because of the requirements of evidence and persecution. In conclusion, we found that placing emphasis on English and Spanish learning in the education systems of the US and Mexico, and providing information on migration in Spanish, making it more accessible to the less educated, would help solve this issue.
In addition, it is really important that we remind ourselves that we need to educate the public to combat stigma and fear regarding immigration, because there's a lot of fear surrounding it, and we need to remain empathetic for these people because we really do not truly understand what they're going through. And they go through immense struggles from where they're from in Mexico, facing gender-based violence, to the difficult transition to life in the US.
Thank you for listening to our presentation and honoring that women's rights are human rights.